knows that my son, Sean Mullen, was kidnapped for ransom. This is what waits for the man who took him. This is your ransom. But this is as close as you'll ever get to it. Instead, I'm offering this money as a reward on your head.
Why won't you pay off to save your son?
You think I wouldn't do absolutely everything in my power to get him back? Mel Gibson. If I don't get my son back, I'm going to dedicate my life to tracking you down.
In a film by Ron Howard.
You don't know where he is. You don't know who he is.
Everybody, hold your fire. We have an eye on him. White male armed with a handgun.
You still have a chance to do the right thing. If you don't,
Who got shot?
well, then God be with you, because nobody else on this earth will be.
You kill him, you kill yourself. Hello! Give me back my son!
And we're back, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Friday evening here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Today marks 28 years since the release of probably a top 10 big studio thriller of the decade of the 90s, the greatest movie decade. That is another hill that I will gladly go down on. I will gladly argue the 90s over the 70s, the 90s over the 2010s, whatever you want. It's all in good fun. But on this day, November 8th, 1996, Ron Howard's super successful follow-up to what I believe is his greatest achievement, not A Beautiful Mind, but Apollo 13, on November 8th, 1996, Mel Gibson's collaboration with Ron Howard, Ransom, opened in theaters. Now, we're all familiar with how certain movie trailers give away too much, and teaser trailers don't give us anything, and that sucks. Everything sucks. I know. Hollywood always fucks up. But I remember where I was when I watched the trailer for Ransom. I watched the trailer for Ransom before seeing Independence Day. I think I only saw that once in theaters. The reason why the trailer for Ransom was so unexpected is it does something completely different than most trailers. It sets up a nightmare scenario. It puts us into a nightmare scenario in the trailer, and then it turns the nightmare scenario on its head by hitting us over the head with something that we are not expecting. So in brief, and this is not a spoiler, this is all over any of the ads, even the poster. Hell, the title of the movie, Ransom. The Yankees had a player a couple of years ago named Cody Ransom. Spoiler alert, this movie is not about Cody Ransom. It's about an actual ransom demand. So in the world of this film, Mel Gibson, who was actually, as we know, very good at playing heroes who were not all that heroic. He did it in Lethal Weapon. He did it in Payback. In this movie, he plays a super successful, self-made airline industry titan named Tom Mullen. And for was it the second time? No, at this point in history, the third time of working with Rene Russo. No, it would have been the second time. The third time was Lethal Weapon 4. They worked together in Lethal Weapon 3. Yes, second time. Rene Russo plays his wife. He is super successful, but he is a guy who, although he operates above board, he is not in legal jeopardy. He's done a couple of really shady things that could someday come back to bite him, or maybe not. But this is not somebody who is presented as corrupt through and through. This is Dennis Quaid in The Big Easy 20 years earlier, where he's probably not the worst guy, but he's also not incorruptible. And if he has a way to buy his way out of a problem by going like this, he's going to do it. So as the story opens, they have a son, Sean, played by Nick Nolte's son in real life, Brawley Nolte. They're at a science fair somewhere in the city, And unbeknownst to them, but we kind of have an idea, their son is about to get kidnapped. Then he does get kidnapped, which sets up a ransom situation. But what the trailer, the incredible trailer, does is it gives you what I just said.
We have your son.
FBI, police. Well, everyone tells Tom Mullen, okay, they want $2 million. You're really rich. You can afford the $2 million. All right, let's fucking go. Let's get the kid back. But a funny thing happens on the way to getting his son back in exchange for money. He gets the very distinct impression, and we as the audience get the very distinct impression, that they're just going to take the money. They have no intention of giving him his son back. Now, we don't get that part of it in the trailer. There's flashes from the sequence I just referenced where he realizes, fuck these guys. They're not playing fair again. Guess who also isn't going to play fair? Well, the moment in the trailer that dropped everyone's jaw and I believe spurred this movie to be an even bigger hit than it would have been if that had not been in the trailer. Because this film was budgeted, including marketing, somewhere in the range of $70 million. It grossed well over 300 at the box office. Got mostly good reviews. There were actually some critics who had problems with the fact that Mel Gibson's character was not an entirely good guy. I mean, come on. Come on. How many heel protagonists did Michael Douglas play? You want me to start counting them off? Because he played a lot of them just in the decade of the 90s. Basic Instinct, The Game, Disclosure, Falling Down. Well, we need heroes to always be 100% true blue heroic. For certain actors, at a certain time, fine. But for other actors, at a different time, the shadings work. And I give Ron Howard credit for going with it. Because given Ron Howard's aw shucks attitude, he's taking a risk here. This is not Jim Lovell rescuing his son or trying to. This is a guy who is super successful, brilliant, but will not be fucked with. So that moment in the trailer is Fox 5 New York, Rosanna Scotto. She was the anchor back then. She plays herself in this movie. Here's Mel broadcasting to the kidnappers. Mild spoiler, but you know this 2 minutes into the movie. Gary Sinise, who was a New York City cop named Jimmy Shaker, he's one of the kidnappers. And Sinise joked at the time, why don't I ever get to play the good guy who gets the girl? Didn't get the girl in Forrest Gump. He doesn't really get, there's no girl scenario in Apollo 13. It was kind of a running gag. He didn't really get the girl in Of Mice and Men, but that's not really a get the girl kind of story either, is it? Didn't get the girl in A Midnight Clear. His character was batshit crazy in that film. Good movie, World War II film directed by Keith Gordon. So Mel has $2 million in front of him. This is in the movie, but in the trailer, it turns out to be the centerpiece and we're not expecting it. He's got $2 million in cash. Who wants to be a millionaire? In cash right in front of him. And what we think is he is saying, these kidnappers have my son. Here's the ransom. I want my son back. But instead, Tom Mullen says, I want you, Mr. and Mrs. Kidnapper. I want you to take a good look at this hard-earned money. That's right. This is my money. This is what you want. This is your ransom. Now I want you to take a real good look at it because it's as close as you're ever going to get for it. Because I'm taking this money and I'm putting it out there as a ransom on your head. It is an incredible moment in the movie, but in the trailer, I'm telling you, people were gasping. That's how you do it. That's how you make a trailer. You don't do what the audience expects. You cut the rug out from under them. And that's what that did. Now, wait a minute. This is not going to be a movie about paying off kidnappers and then maybe we'll get them. This is a movie about fighting fire with fire. This is a movie about a guy who will not be fucked with. You fuck with me, and I'm going to push back harder. I know you're going to kill my son. How about you're all going to die too? Here I am. Come get me. It's one of Mel's best performances because he sells it. It makes sense. This is not something that happens in a vacuum. He doesn't just randomly decide to taunt the kidnappers. He knows they're not giving him his son back. He knows. And we as the audience know. This is a story where we get the information at the same time as the characters. It builds a lot of suspense because you don't know exactly how it's going to pan out. You figure, okay, the kid's not going to get killed and all of this. Some great supporting performances. Sinise is terrific. Donnie Wahlberg, previously of New Kids on the Block, plays one of the kidnappers. I think that he is he the brother of the Lily Taylor character? That's the girlfriend of Gary Sinise's Detective Jimmy Shaker. I think that he might be her brother, but he's part of the group. And honestly, he's the only one who seems to have anything approaching a conscience. He's under the impression this is a cash grab. They're not going to be able to track us. We're going to let the kid go. When he realizes that they're not going to let the kid go, he has a problem with that. How big of a problem is he going to cause, if any? Well, I guess you just have to watch the movie. But I like the way the film teases who is actually the worst of these kidnappers. And Gary Sinise, again, very normal person looking guy. He's an attractive man, but he's an attractive man who doesn't look like a movie star. That's what he was joking about when he's saying, why don't I ever get the girl? Because you look like a regular guy, I guess. Charles Bronson looked like a regular guy. He got the girl. Roy Scheider looked like a regular guy. He got the girl. Dustin Hoffman. He also got the girl every once in a while. The irony is that I think the Lily Taylor character, spoiler alert, I think that she is the most craven of all of them. She's the most hardcore, not the cop who has turned. You know, to compare another big-time thriller from the 90s, Gary Oldman in The Professional. Compared to him, Jimmy Shaker's pretty good. He gets a B. You know, he's corrupt, but he's still going to do an okay job when he's not stealing money and kidnapping kids. Gary Oldman in The Professional, Doug Stansfield, way worse. Hell, Gary Oldman in Romeo is Bleeding, another movie where he plays a cop, way worse. Just shows Gary Oldman, there's levels to how horrendously evil he can be in movies. You want to argue he's the worst is in Dracula? Okay, whatever. It's a kind of performance, and this was Mel's follow-up to Braveheart. And he had, while they were filming, he won his Oscar for directing and for the picture. Braveheart is not a perfect film. I am a huge fan of it, and if you ask me which do I prefer, Braveheart or Gladiator, I prefer Braveheart. I really like Gladiator, but even with the historical ridiculousness of Braveheart, I don't think there's any way to deny how impressive the production is. And again, I understand Mel Gibson, very polarizing figure. I'm not defending Mel Gibson, the person. We're just talking about the movie. I listened to his director's commentary for Braveheart. He sat for 3 hours talking about his film. I appreciated it. But the way that he described what he was doing, what he was trying to do, he came across really humble. And he discussed other movies with wide shots. He said, I must have watched Kubrick's Spartacus. I watched from start to finish 5 times, and I tried to absorb as much as I could. Lawrence of Arabia. I'm a huge David Lean fan. Like, Gibson was and is a student of film history. He isn't just a guy. Yeah, I know he didn't go to film school. Neither did Clint. Neither did Costner. They all won Best Director Oscars within a 5-year stretch. but he was absorbing as much as he could. He didn't just drop into this and direct a film. I didn't like The Man Without a Face, his first movie. It's well shot. I think the movie just is a miss. Gibson, though, is a great filmmaker. His Oscar for director was well-deserved. I don't think it should have won Best Picture. I think Apollo 13 was a better film. But again, that's neither here nor there. The story goes that while Mel and Ron Howard were finishing, I actually think that Mel was with Ron. I know they were together because both guys told the story independent of one another. They were with one another, whether they were going over a scene, I don't know. When the Oscar nominations for films released in 1995 were announced, and when Ron Howard was not nominated for Best Director, Gibson said he, meaning Mel, was apoplectic. He loved that movie. He thought that Ron was probably going to win Best Director because Ron was so popular. And he didn't say that. This is me editorializing. That's a travesty right there, that Ron Howard was not nominated for Best Director for Apollo 13. Absolute, complete ridicularity. But what I like also about Ransom is it doesn't feel like a Ron Howard film. The energy in this movie, the way that he gets his hands dirty as filmmaker, that he's not afraid to show really low, gutter people and actions taken. This does not feel like the man who directed Cocoon, which is such a great movie, but it's a film that has that whimsy, that gentle whimsy of early Spielberg. I mean, Spielberg could have directed Cocoon too. It feels very much like him. But here is, after he did The Paper, which was a very good movie, not entirely successful in terms of box office. They was expecting maybe awards. That was Michael Keaton. And then after Apollo 13, obviously Ron Howard says, I want to do something different. I want to get lower. I want to see if I can make this kind of movie. And he succeeds brilliantly. So the dynamics within various characters in this film, there's more going on than just kidnapper Tom Mullen. How many kidnappers are there? You have Delroy Lindo in a very critical role as the FBI's point man in the attempted recovery of Sean Mullen. And Delroy's one of those actors, he's like a cheat code. Now, he had been the previous year in Get Shorty, which I absolutely love. To me, Get Shorty is a notch below Pulp Fiction. That is how great that movie is. Delroy plays more or less a villainous character in Get Shorty. In this film, he is technically a good guy, but he is convinced the only way to get the kid back is to pay. Yeah, asshole, that's great, but you saw what happened when I tried to pay. It didn't work. We're not going down that road again. So is he actually, we know that he's a good guy, but sometimes people who are good guys can be impediments to the protagonist. And that's another thing this movie does that's unexpected. Because Delroy doesn't want him to take matters into his own hands. He wants him to follow the fucking law, pal. Hey, did they follow the law when they took my kid? And he even asked the question, he said, the last recoveries that you've worked, and he's not trying to antagonize, the last recoveries that you've worked, how did they go? He said, worked 10, got back 7. I mean, that's not a bad percentage. But as Mel points out, what do you tell the family when you brought back a corpse? And Mel, as a self-starter, Tom Mullen, as a guy who clearly had an incredible amount of motivation to get to where he was without any head start. He didn't inherit a couple of million and then built an airline. He inherited shit. We are led to believe this is a guy who started from scratch. That's the kind of guy. If he doesn't follow his potentially flawed moral compass, but if he doesn't do everything he can, he won't be able to live with himself. He is that sort of a personality. And Rene Russo, we're led to believe, as Kate, the mom, it's a good role for Rene. This is not a throwaway. Similar to the fact as in The Line of Fire, which opposite Clint 3 years earlier, which I still say is her best performance. She's not just the wife. She is an active participant, and she challenges him at various points of the story because she, although understands you tried to do it once, it didn't work. She is not on board with what he did on television. Here's the $2 million. I hope somebody takes your fucking heads off. I hope you all die. You bring me back my son, or you're all going to die. Take it back. Tell him you'll pay. No, I don't think so. I'm not doing it. And the dynamics between them is something that you don't often see in a film. When you have a movie where there is marital strife, usually there's always marital strife. This is a marriage that's in the death throes or whatever it might be. No, they are presented as very much in love. Maybe they've been together 15 years, maybe 20. We don't know the exact amount of time. But they have real serious arguments because their son has been kidnapped. It doesn't mean the marriage is going to end. It means they disagree on how to best proceed. But Tom Mullen is the kind of person, he is going to do what he thinks is best. Tried it your way. I almost got killed. Now it's my way or the highway. There's a door. Don't really need the FBI anymore. You can just go take a long walk off a short pier, buddy. But Mel is and was always great in these kinds of roles. And we saw the softer side of him in films like Forever Young with Jamie Lee Curtis and Maverick, which I think Maverick is fucking hilarious. He and James Garner, they look enough alike where they could be father and son. The shape of the face, the build, it's not that different. And Jodie Foster is phenomenal in Maverick. Like, that's a really good 3-star movie out of 4, if you ask me. What he does here, though, this is not William Wallace. This is a morally ambiguous, gray area kind of guy who is put in a terrible situation. Specifically, and we learn this, because he is a guy who will pay. He showed he would pay. There was an issue with a mobster where he took part in an illegal payment. That's presumably why he was targeted in the first place by Gary Sinise and his band of kidnappers. This guy will pay. You're going to give him the kid back? Fuck him. But he's going to pay. There's all of these different elements in the film that we don't expect. And I remember the Newsday, it was Newsday review. They thought the film from an action thriller perspective was fantastic. The critic, who I think was John Anderson, who normally wouldn't go into this, he hated the fact that Mel's character was so muddy. Hated it. He wanted a more conventional hero. Well, then you should have gotten Stallone, or maybe even Bruce Willis. He could have done a John McClane kind of thing. Now there's an idea. They could have done Ransom as a Die Hard movie. Bring back Bonnie Bedelia. Now it wouldn't have worked. This is the sort of movie that was a big success, but there couldn't be a sequel. They're going to kidnap the kid again. That was one of the problems with the show Prison Break. The first season was like the greatest single season of TV of all time. I mean, certainly in the conversation, it's so brilliant. But then what? They got to escape from another prison, and in another prison, and in another prison? Still a good show, but never equaled the first season. This is a one-off. This was always going to be a one-off. And I think it's phenomenal. I give this movie at least a 9 out of 10. And you start thinking of, because there's different kinds of thrillers. This is not Seven. This is not a thriller with horror movie elements. This is a straightforward, edge-of-your-seat nail-biter. The kind that Hollywood seemed to knock out very efficiently and high quality a lot. Copycat from 1995, which is closer in tone to, it's similar to Seven in that it's a serial killer story, but there's no horror movie elements in Copycat. That's another kind of breathless, edge-of-your-seat thriller with, in that case, the protagonists are both female. A little bit of a gender switch in that movie that the heroes are Holly Hunter's police officer. Man, Holly Hunter, what an awesome actress, right? She won the Oscar for The Piano not that long before Copycat. And the lifelong end boss cheat code Sigourney Weaver. Copycat. But Ransom, to me, holds its own with any of the great thrillers of the 90s. Hey, In a Line of Fire with Clint, which I mentioned, also with Rene Russo. That's in the top 10. You want to put Harrison Ford, Fugitive, up there? Absolutely. But Ransom, $309+ million box office 28 years ago for an R-rated, very serious, pitched at an adult audience thriller, released on this day, 1996. This has been episode 352 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Friday evening with me here in New York. If you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, and I'm channeling Mel's Tom Mullen, give me back my son! Peace.